And my special guest is the great governor of the great state of Arizona, Doug Ducey, and I'm so glad that, Governor, that you would take some time to join us on this town hall tonight. I am very appreciative of your leadership and what the Arizona Department of Health Services has been doing, as you and your team have been on this for right from the beginning, and we're certainly blessed here in Arizona, even though we have massive challenges just like everywhere else. But with that, Governor, again, press *3 for questions. Governor Doug Ducey, thank you. I'm going to turn some time over to you.
Thanks so much, Representative Biggs. I want to say thank you for the kind words. We really miss you in the Arizona State Legislature, but the United States Congress is lucky to have you. And thank you for your tireless work on behalf of the people of Arizona during this unprecedented national and state health emergency. This situation with COVID-19 is unlike anything we've experienced as a state or a nation. So I want to give everybody an update on what we're doing at the state level, the focus around public health, and then how our priorities are going to unfold as this transpires. Our approach has been and will remain to act with urgency, but we also want to be calm and steady. From the beginning, the governor's office has remained in close contact with Dr. Kara Christ and her team at the Arizona Department of Health Services and public health experts at the CDC and NIH. Dr. Christ is an infectious disease epidemiologist. She's a medical doctor. She guided the state through the Ebola virus, through H1N1, through a measles outbreak. We are very lucky to have her. The recommendations from these subject matter experts on public health have evolved to match the facts on the ground specific to Arizona, and that's going to continue to be the case. Arizona recently updated our guidance based on CDC recommendations that large events and mass gatherings be canceled. On Tuesday, the Department of Health Services updated its guidance related to bars and restaurants, child care providers, and nursing homes. They also implemented enhanced social distancing measures. I encourage everyone to visit. You can go to @DougDucey on Twitter or Doug Ducey on Facebook. We post these updates. And the website for health services is azhealth.gov. It's updated daily, and they've done a really good job on how they communicate guidance on the coronavirus in terms that we all can understand. And on Monday, I sent a letter to the Small Business Administration requesting an economic injury disaster loan declaration for Arizona that will help small businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. We got great news today that our request has been approved, meaning small businesses will be able to apply for economic relief to help make ends meet. To apply, you can visit sba.gov/disaster. Now, I want to give some praise out there for our healthcare workers. When it comes to testing, our health professionals, led by Dr. Kara Christ, have been working closely with the federal government to secure additional testing supplies. The other day, I met with representatives from private sector labs who are expanding testing capacity throughout Arizona, including Banner Health, Sonora Quest, LabCorp, TGen, and Mayo Clinic. And on that note, I want to take a moment to praise Arizona's doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals. They're serving on the front lines of this fight. They're working around the clock, and we're grateful and fortunate to have them here. Their efforts are all to keep our people and our public safe. My hat also goes off to the staff and volunteers at our schools. With schools being closed, my office has worked closely with Superintendent Hoffman to ensure that no child in Arizona goes hungry. We want every parent out there to know schools are still providing meals for any kid under the age of 18. These resources are available, so please visit your local school district website to find out when and where you can stop by for breakfast or lunch, or both. So this is what's coming next. With COVID-19, we understand there's a very real fear and concern in our communities, and people are asking, what's next? What can we expect? My response to that question is that this situation is changing, and sometimes by the hour. When it comes to the decisions we are making as a state, I want to assure everybody that we're not guessing and we're not being alarmist. We're going to be guided by data, facts, and science in consultation with subject matter experts, both at the federal level and the state level. We're acting urgently to prioritize public health, and I want to say once again how much I appreciate having an elected leader like Andy Biggs, who is being supportive and not playing politics with this crisis. People in Arizona need to know that we're going to be innovative and resourceful, and we'll be timely and transparent. When I know something, you will know something. It will be on the azhealth.gov website, my Twitter feed, my Facebook account, all of that. We're going to continue to make this top priority. We're going to work in partnership with leaders like Congressman Andy Biggs and our partners throughout the communities. We're also going to be focusing on our economy, and we realize what is happening in the economy, specifically the service economy. So, Congressman Biggs, maybe on your next telephone town hall, that's something we can have conversation on. For people who want the latest information, I want to remind everyone to visit azhealth.gov. And Congressman, I'd love to stay on for the rest of the call. If there's any questions that are specific to us, let you and I talk afterwards, and I'll make sure that your constituents get the answer. But I've got to get back to my day job here because there's more to do in the governor's office. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Governor Ducey, thank you so very much. We appreciate your kind comments, but also your leadership, and your team has done a great job. Very, very fortunate to be here with you tonight, and thanks for giving so much information to the constituents who live in Congressional District 5. And so we'll be talking soon, and we'll give you any specific questions that are for you when we can.
Happy to help.
Thanks,
Keep doing what you're doing, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it.
God bless.
So folks who are in, I want to just go over a couple of things to give you some context of where we are today. First of all, I appreciate the governor talking about you want to act with urgency, but you want to be calm and steady as well. And he is right that this thing is very fluid. It's moving in so many directions, and we all hear different things every day. You do, I do. Some of it is misinformation. Some of it's reliable, and so I try to keep everyone posted in the district on what we have. If you go to bigs.house.gov, you'll see a tab for coronavirus information, and it will give you a drop-down menu with everything from the Arizona Department of Health Services to the Center for Disease Control, National Institute of Health, and numerous other links that are on there, including when I get things from leadership in Congress, I try to get those linked up as well, and we'll keep doing that also. So, if you have a question for me, please press *3. Now, just to let you know what we're doing in the office, we have basically acknowledged that what we're doing is we're going to work through teleworking. My staff, both in D.C. and here in Arizona in the district, are still on the job, but they're working from home. They have access to their phones, their computers, and can keep doing work in constituent services. We just have been advised not to have folks come in to the office, so that's kind of where that ended up. We also had some big events that we love doing that have been canceled until we get to a different space, and that would be Drop Zone, which was scheduled for April 4th. We're having to cancel that. Our Salute to Veterans and Service Members on May 7th has been canceled. We're canceling the festival and presentation part of the Congressional Art Competition, but we are still going to have entrants, and we're still going to have our judges judge the art, and we're still going to present the awards for the Congressional Art Competition. So those are some big things that we've had to move as well to deal with this, because we're no different than you. And So I want to just also move to my latest briefing. So just to let you know, we have a briefing in Congress, at least one a day, sometimes two a day, sometimes actually even more. And when we were in Congress before I came back to the district last weekend, it wasn't unusual for me to have two coronavirus briefings at the exact same time. And so that would be kind of tough to get to both of those. But I want to let you know now. We had one today, and Dr. Fauci was on, and I want to cover just some information that he gave so you can have some context. First of all, globally, there are about 200,000 known coronavirus cases. In the U.S., at the end of business yesterday was about 9,500. At the close of business today, it is up a little bit. And the U.S. has had 150 deaths nationwide that are known to be attributable to the coronavirus. We anticipate that there's going to be increasing numbers of coronavirus. We don't know yet what the denominator is, and by that I mean we aren't sure exactly how many people we are screening, but because we are screening more and there are more test kits available, and so we're not just doing clinical diagnoses, we're not doing test diagnoses. What's happening is you're going to have a continued increase of the number of people who are confirmed cases of coronavirus. The fact of the matter is that Europe is now the epicenter. It's no longer China. It's no longer Iran, but it's Europe. And according to Dr. Fauci, it looks like China is on the far side of the bell curve. The curve has been down to them, and now they are dropping down with the number of people who are every day any new cases. So they're on the healing and recovering side, according to Dr. Fauci. Further, he said there are two pillars of containment of this, and this is important. Number one, you want to prevent those who are infected from coming into the United States, and that's why the travel ban from China was important early on, and why the travel ban now from Europe is so important, because Europe is now the center of this epidemic. And then the second pillar is how do you control the cases in your country? So you want to contain and you want to mitigate, and the way you contain is basically you basically limit contact with one another. The way you mitigate is you interrupt the physical contact, particularly with the most vulnerable, which are the elderly and those who have multiple serious health concerns ahead of time. That's why the CDC has said no crowds greater than 10 and urged people to stay out of crowds. But the bottom line is Dr. Fauci made sure it's impossible to suppress all infections. Anyway, with that, I could go on with the rest of this. I know that we have people that want to ask questions. I appreciate that President Trump. I want, just so you know, I am in contact with the White House every day, trying to get information and advocate for certain mitigation measures. So with that, we're going to take our first caller, and it looks like it's Richard in Mesa. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Andy.
Thanks for calling in today, Richard.
Thank you.
You have a question for me?
I do have a question for you. I know that there was important legislation brought up this week, and I know that you had voiced your dissent against it, which I really appreciate you representing the broad interests of our district. My question is what are the repercussions of this new legislation that was signed into law going forward? Some of the secret or I guess stuff that got through that wasn't really populated. That's my question. What are repercussions of this going forward? I understand why it was passed and it needed to be passed, and I think the dissenting voices on it are very important to be heard and noted. But I'm just not sure going forward down the road once the crisis is over, what are we sort of stuck with moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. That's a great question. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the process itself because that was questionable at best. But there were changes made for that bill throughout the day, and what the long-term repercussions, because I think that's what you're asking me about, is what will happen. A couple things are going to happen. You're creating new constituencies with some of the expansion of social programs that were expanded in that bill. So that's going to go on. I doubt that those will truly sunset simply because you have a new constituency. It's very hard to reduce or pare back a program once you've expanded the constituency. Second thing is the bill on Saturday that had 40 no votes, 55 people did not support the bill. It really was hard on small businesses. So the way to think of it is they exempted businesses with 500 or more employees from the FLMA and the unemployment and the extended leave provisions within the original bill. And that bill was designed to cover from 1 to 500 employees. That was the Saturday bill. And that bill basically said, and this is part of the ramifications and why some of us looked at it askance, is because you were really causing trouble for a small employer who might have 2 or 3, 5, 10 employees. Maybe you're a restaurant with 35 employees. But the point is, if you had already a paid time off program, you had to exhaust your paid time off program, then extend for another 14 days coverage, and that was paid for. And then you also had to provide 10 days of leave, actually not 10 days, but 10 weeks of leave, paid leave at 2/3 a person's regular salary. So altogether, besides being on the hook for the 2 weeks or whatever your paid time off policy is, you get an additional 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks plus 10 weeks of 2/3 pay for that. And the way to get paid back for that is a refundable tax credit. And so what that boils down to is you're upfronting the money and hoping that you basically get the refund or the check of the difference between your taxes owed when the quarter was over. That's part of the problem, is that it didn't if you're going to provide immediate relief to the businesses, the small businesses that immediately need it, it seemed to me like that was kind of a way that was going to be, you're going to be closing the barn door after all the cows have been let out of the barn. So that was pretty bad, and that's just one of the things that was going on there. And I want this needs to be clarified. That bill was about 115 pages or something like that, and the technical corrections bill that went in to fix that bill and negotiate strategy. So the things I just told you were actually changed on Monday when no one was there. There were only 4 people on the floor. They did that by unanimous consent. They did it when no one was there to either object or to support. But it fixed at least a portion of what I told you, and that is to say, if you're under 50 employees, you are now exempt. So if you're under 50 or you're 500 or over, you're exempt from those paid leaves, the requirements like I told you about. But if you have 51 to 499 employees, you're still stuck with the paid leave requirements, and that's a problem. So thanks, Richard, for calling and asking that question. And now we're going to go to the next one. We're going to Sally in Mesa, I think. Sally?
Hello.
Hi, Sally. How are you?
Oh, hi, Representative. Thank you so much for the great job you do. I so appreciate you, and also Senator McSally, if you see her, please give her a hearty thank you from me, because I think she's also doing a great job getting information out and supporting positive morale here in Arizona with her postings and prayers as well. And I greatly appreciate that. My question is, I was one of the few, I guess, who didn't make a mad rush to the grocery stores when everybody did. So I didn't get like I didn't need tons of toilet paper and stuff like that. But now my friends and I are finding that when we call places like Walmart or Walgreens or whatever just to go and get regular stuff, we're getting told by their managers that they don't know when their trucks are arriving, they don't know what's going to be in the trucks, they don't know when their warehouses are going to be filled again, and this is not just silly things like toilet paper, but even for like stuff like gets kind of concerning for food. So I was wondering, like Governor Ducey or people that are in charge. I left a question like that for the mayor of Mesa. What's being done to actually sort of look and see that, since we have all the snowbirds here still, that adequate supplies are going to come back into the store so that people will have a choice if you need yogurt or you need stuff like that, that we will get food and we will get the things we need back into the stores again.
Well, Sally, thank you. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate the kind comments, and I also appreciate the question because, like you, I've been out in the stores just to see what's going on and just buy something here or there. Tried to buy some hamburger meat the other night. There was no hamburger meat at the store that I was at, and we've seen a lot of I think people being very concerned and getting out and buying up a lot of things. I don't have what I would consider to be a great answer for you because what I'm hearing is that there are supplies in the country. This has disrupted the normal supply chains of a lot of food and produce in the country, but that I've been told that a couple of things are happening with regard to regulatory easing by the feds to provide an ability to transport easier and more quickly. That's one thing that might be helpful. The other thing is that I haven't received all the information that I want to receive on from the retailers on this, but they're trying to get this in, and right now the supply chain has just been so disrupted. Everything from people not necessarily wanting to drive the trucks, and we all need to thank God for the people who drive the trucks and are willing to get out there and drive the trucks and load those trucks and unload those trucks. And so that's a blessing, and I'll keep checking on that, and I will post something on the website as soon as I get an answer. And Sally, we'll also try to if possible, we'll try to reach out to you. So appreciate the call, Sally. Again, please press *3 if you have questions. It looks like now we're going to go to Domingo in Queen Creek. Domingo.
Hey, Representative Biggs. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Hey, I'm a tax lawyer. I live in LD12, and one of the concerns that I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm sure that it has been brought to your attention, but just to redouble the efforts, is that Secretary Mnuchin did put into action the ability for taxpayers to delay tax payments by 90 days with tax liabilities of under $1 million. But my concern is that, your average Arizonan likely hasn't engaged their tax preparer, whether it be H&R Block or whatever, and may now not want to because it usually requires a close contact visit. Since a taxpayer can elect for a 6-month extension just by filing a form, it seems to me that you should urge Secretary Mnuchin to simply just automatically extend everyone's returns until October 15th.
Domingo, that's a great point, and I'm pleased to tell you that not only did I share that personally directly with the President of the United States, I also have shared it with his team, and I was pleased, like you, that the tax payment was deferred, but I was less pleased that they didn't just automatically delay the filing. I would prefer the filing delayed until November 15th, and that's what I've asked for. And I will continue to press that, Domingo, because I think that would be very helpful for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which there's a lot of concern in the country, and this would be one less item to be worried about for most Americans. And so I agree with you, Domingo, and I've tried to champion that with the administration, and I'll continue to fight that. And I've been working with some of my colleagues to get them to also express that sentiment to the president and the White House staff as well. All right, we're going to go next to Roger in Gilbert. Roger.
Yes, Andy.
Hey, thanks for calling in tonight, Roger.
Our transportation has really taken a hit. The airlines and also the rail like Amtrak and places like Valley Metro where the ridership is way down. And I know there's going to be some support, and I just wanted to make sure that in addition to the airlines is that the railroads like Amtrak and places like Valley Metro are helped out with some subsidies.
Hey, Roger, let me tell you what I've heard I have not had a chance to read it because Mitch McConnell just released his Phase 3 relief package this afternoon. But I can tell you that what I was told last night is that there's $50 billion in there for airlines. They could not tell me, the people I was talking to could not tell me whether that also included rail and bus service. I will check on that as well. Those are good questions that I couldn't even get an answer last night. As I said, I haven't had a chance to read the proposed bill yet, which, by the way, is still under negotiation, is my understanding. They're still inviting ideas and inputs. So where I can put input in with what Domingo asked about and what you've asked, Roger, I will do so. But that's the planned relief package as far as I get right now is $50 billion. So and as far as I know, that's primarily to the airlines. And let's just see what I can find out and try to get that word out to y'all as my constituents and you want to know. Appreciate that. I'm looking next at William in Gilbert.
Thank you, Congressman Biggs, for taking my call. I just want to mention real quick.
Thank you.
I love it when I hear you on Fox News, primarily with Fox and Friends in the morning. But besides that, my question to you is, I'm a small business owner. I have a bar and grill in the city of Phoenix, and the mayor shut us down 2 days ago. The problem that I'm having is, aside from the employees, which is really huge and important, I have 9 employees. I'm a super small business. I do less than $500,000 a year in total revenue between my bar and my restaurant. So I've owned this restaurant and bar for 5 years now, and we very meagerly just barely get by. And now that I made a food order on Sunday online, and Monday comes along, we get our food order delivered, my alcohol order comes in, and then all of a sudden on Tuesday, I'm told that I have to shut down. Now, all of my perishables, I've now had to donate. I don't know how I'm going to recover that. I heard you talking earlier about how part of this bill to help us recuperate, some of it was going to be on the backs of the what's the owner, the small business owner, through a tax credit. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me today. It doesn't help me a year from now when I get that tax credit. What I need relief now. My employees are looking at me going, what are we going to do? Where can I get that? I've heard zero information out there about where to get the help for my employees and for myself. This is my livelihood. And I'm shut down.
Yeah. So William, I get what you're saying, and that's one of the reasons that I voted no. Now, some of that was fixed because now you are exempt from what I would have felt would be even more pressure on you is to provide that interim FMLA and extended sick leave. So you're exempt now under the bill that was passed out, or the revision bill which came out of the House Monday. But what I will tell you is that the federal government has basically approved treatment of the coronavirus as a disaster for SBA loans and other relief. So in your case, William, what I would suggest is there's a website. It's sba.gov/disaster. sba.gov/disaster. I think they might be able to provide some quick relief. The idea behind some of this was to try to get quick relief. Part of my problem with it is it was not designed. And when we talked to the Treasury Secretary, either I can't remember when, days begin to blur because we're kind of working on the weekend as well. So I think it was over the weekend or Monday. They were still trying to figure out how to design the program so that they can get relief more quickly to folks exactly like you. You're the ones that I keep talking about. I talk about the small restaurateur who has 5, 10, 15 employees, and they're dealing with products that are perishable, so they order them, and then the next day they find out it's closed, and they're told that the whole world is basically told, don't go to that business. There's a business in our district as well, just right up the road from where we are sitting right now, and they just opened up, and you go there. Nobody's in there. You can go and get takeout food, but you can't do any more than that. And the place, I don't know how much money they put into it, but my guess is they spent a lot of money, and now they're on the cusp of the bankruptcy because most really small businesses don't have more than 2 to 4 weeks worth of cash on hand to be able to get them through the time, and we really don't see the end of this. I don't know when the end is going to be, when the curve starts bending down. So, William, I'm sorry, but I would just tell you that sba.gov/disaster may be a good place to go to get information. And I would say don't hesitate to call my office and let's see what else we can do, who else we can put you in touch with. This is important. I'm trying to let the White House know. I'm trying to let the administration know. Trying to let our legislative leadership know what's going on out here. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have this town hall tonight, to find out. Thank you for calling in, William. We're going to go to now William in Chandler. William in Chandler.
Hello, Congressman. This is Will. I am calling you because about 6 days ago, one of my doctor friends mentioned that there was a drug that they had used for SARS that he thought might be something that they would look at for this virus, and it was called chloroquine. And he was saying there was chloroquine and hydrochloroquine. And now, that was 6 days ago, and now I just saw on the internet where some doctor did some limited study with 30 patients, double-blind, the whole thing, and it was it was a limited study, but it came out 100% within 6 days. The people who were had the virus tested negative, and that they had 100% recovery rate, and the people who took the placebo tested positive still. And so, here's my guy telling me 6 days ago this might be something that they would use, and now all of a sudden I see it on the internet as maybe. So are you hearing something like this from the medical team in D.C.? I mean, are they mentioning this at all? Is this a real thing, or is this something that's, I don't know.
Well, hey, Will, thanks for calling in and asking that question. I have done some research on it, and we did hear from Dr. Fauci today. I've seen the report on the double-blind out of France. It was a French researcher who did it using Italian coronavirus patients. China has done a very limited study with no control group either, which is part of their problem. And the question that we asked today of Dr. Fauci is hydrochloroquine or chloroquine, they're both related to each other. His report to us is that they are safe, they're effective, they've been used. I'm sorry. We don't know if for an antiviral if they're effective. We know that they're safe for human consumption. They've been used for decades in malaria cases, and they were used in the SARS in very limited fashion, is what he said. But his position was that they don't find any reports of side effects, so they're safe. He thinks that as a compassionate use, chloroquine or hydrochloroquine should be prescribed. We don't know the actual efficacy. The only attempt at a real study with coronavirus is the study from the French researcher, and it was very small n, so it's hard to tell how effective it really is. But those pills, in what I saw in a piece I read yesterday, they run about 5 cents a piece, and while they're not proven to be helpful necessarily, neither are they unsafe to take. And again, Dr. Fauci said, look, as a compassionate use, maybe chloroquine can be used. And by the way, they're not just being used. He's not just suggesting that they're being used as a treatment, but also in some instances as in lieu of a vaccine. It might make it a little bit more difficult to come down with the coronavirus. We simply don't know. But Will, I do appreciate you calling in and raising that question, because I think a lot of people were asking about that came up in our briefing today. So I appreciate that. And now, again, press *3 if you have a question. And we're going to go to Joseph in Gilbert. Joseph?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, for letting me have add to my problem here. I'm a senior citizen, 71 years old, always worked 2 jobs, always owned my own house, and now I rent. My rent has just been increased over $300 a month. As of April 1st, I will be homeless. 2 weeks, I will be homeless. Is there any leniency because of this epidemic, this crisis, to not put people out on the street?
Well, there are efforts. So I say, Joseph, there are efforts to try to deal with that with some of the agencies from the federal government. So what I'm going to ask you to do is my constituent services here in the district office, we're still up. We're taking those calls. We're still working on behalf of constituents, and I think we would like to try and help you if we can. So the number is 480-699-8239. 480-699-8239. Joseph, please feel free to call and talk to one of my staff, and we'll start working on that case for you. See what we can do to help out. 480-699-8239. That's my constituent services, and I've got a great staff here in the office. So, Joseph, I'm sorry to hear about that. That is really, really hard. That's a huge rent increase at one time, and we want to see what we can do to kind of help you if we can. We're going to go now to Denise in Mesa.
Congressman Biggs, thank you so much for taking my call. My concern is not only that I'm elderly, but I also work for the airlines, which that's a whole nother subject, is about our borders. We have had no immediate closures, yet we have so many people that are still being held on this side of the borders. We have Border Patrol agents that are basically can become infected at any time. We already had diseases coming across the border. What is being done to address this issue?
Great question, Denise. Thank you for calling in. I'm going to start at the easiest part first, and that's in Canada, where they've closed the border basically, effectively, except for I can't remember the word they use, but necessary to transit the border. They've otherwise closed the border coming in. Mexico is really concerned about that border as well. So I think that's very interesting. So I actually met with a representative of the Border Patrol agents last week, and we were discussing this. I've made my request to the administration that they take extraordinary measures along the border. I think that they're considering that. They're actually considering closing the border. They have taken some measures where they are closing some transit of people across the border from the southern border. And that, of course, makes Mexico concerned because then they have them, and so they're trying to close their border as well. So it's not happening as quickly as I would like it to happen. They are trying to implement this. Interim Director Wolf is trying to get his arms wrapped around it. I hope that we can go well. We actually have a new chief at the Border Patrol as well, and they are trying to get this thing closed. I would like to see us, if we need to, close the border except for transit of necessary goods. I mean, like we move a lot of food across that border, and for a temporary period of time, we might need to really assess what's going on there, because this gets to what Dr. Fauci was talking about, what I was talking about earlier, which is containment from other countries. So, Denise, your point is well taken, and if I can just tell you that in February alone, so we're in the middle of March. In February, the number of apprehensions was 36,000 people. And we think the number of getaways was probably 36,000 people, somewhere about almost 1-to-1 as well. So it's still a crisis on the border that we're trying to deal with. The numbers are down compared to where they were a year ago, but it's still not where it should be. And so we need to be doing something along the border. I've advocated that with the administration. I can't seem to get any traction with some of my colleagues in Congress, except for I'm co-chair of the Border Security Caucus and people there, and that's probably 40, 50, somewhere in that neighborhood, members of Congress are trying to get the attention of the administration and other people in Congress so we can do something on that border sooner rather than later. But Denise, I thank you very much for the call, and now we're going to go to Holly in Queen Creek.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for taking my phone call.
Thank you, Holly. Thanks for calling in.
My question is, I've kind of been following along on that new small business bill, and I completely back small businesses, so please don't take this the wrong way. But I work in a big business, a big corporation spread out across the country. And so from what I've read, I don't qualify for any of like the leaves for my son being out of school. I can't put him in daycare. And so I don't know if there's going to be any help for parents like me, or even have young kids who can't stay home alone. I only get 2 weeks of vacation or sick time, either or. So what do I do? What do single parents do for kids who are out of school for who knows how long? And what if we take it all now and this thing goes till the end of the year? Or if I get sick, I'm curious if there's anything that's planned for that, for big businesses.
No, that's Holly, now you know part of my frustration with some of this legislation that's coming out. When I asked the question, I didn't know your situation, but we asked the question very similar to yours as a hypothetical basis. They said, well, the big corporations, we expect them to take care of their employees. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a righteous expectation or not. And so I said, well, what do you propose on doing then? And this is what they said, well, if they get laid off. I said, but what if they're not laid off? What if they just have to take care of their children? What if they can't telework? What is going to happen there? And right now, the plan that is evolving, and I will just tell you that it is evolving in Congress and with the administration. And the administration has not really given me an answer on this, and neither has my leadership. But what's evolving here is this idea of trying to take care of this through through a state unemployment type of kind of relief for people in your situation, and then the federal government comes in and backfills anything that the state can't deliver. I don't know that actually gets to the situation that you're talking about, because you have a son in daycare. You're going to use all your paid time off, which is 2 weeks. We're trying to actually socially distance for 2 weeks, right, till the end of March. We were told by CDC type folks, or the Dr. Fauci, who's the guy who's dealing with the infectious diseases portion of this. He said, we will reevaluate in 2 weeks where this goes. So I would just say, Holly, I would like to talk more with you about this offline, so I can take your case back as an example of a real case and not just my hypotheticals that I was doing, to the administration and also to the Senate, where they're putting together phase 3 of this relief package this week. So I would love to do that. So in any event, Holly, I appreciate you calling. I appreciate the concern that you have. I think it's critical that we address that, and I'm just not confident that every business with more than 500 people is going to say, well, okay, Holly, if this thing goes for 10 weeks, we're going to give you some kind of paid leave off for that. So that's where we sit right now, and I'm going to do some more work on that, and I look forward to talking to you offline. And Holly, for that number again, 480-699-8239. We're going to go now to Joe in Chandler.
Yes, Congressman.
Hey, Joe.
Big. My question is, on your phase 3 that you guys are working on right now, there seems to be a cutoff of what I've heard, $78,000 that people make under $70,000 will qualify, but people over $70,000 would not qualify. I am a UPS truck driver, and my wife is a nurse, and if something was to happen to us, we wouldn't qualify for because we make too much money. Why couldn't we do something like President Bush and President Obama did a few years back, where if you paid taxes on the prior year, that they, whatever you claim to 2 adults, 2 children, everybody should get something. They shouldn't be discriminated on how much money you're making, because one way or another, we're all going to be affected.
Hey, great question, Joe. So I want to clarify. I may have said this inartfully. I do that a lot lately. So I want to clarify. So the way this is, and again, I'm just going by the briefing I had today. I was getting the briefing the same time that the bill was coming out. I haven't had a chance to read the bill, but I will tell you what they told us the effect of the bill is. This is a $500 billion nut that the federal government is going to send out, and they're going to send out money to every family, every person, every adult person, I should say, and it will be in the form of $1,200 per person if you make from $2,500 to $75,000, or up to $150,000 for a joint filers. So if you and your wife are making $140,000 combined for your taxable income, then you're each going to get a check for $1,200, and then you get $500 for each child under 18 in the household. Where they cut that off is they said if you make more than $150,000, or excuse me, more than $75,000 a person, and more than $150,000 per couple, then you would get, it would scale down until at some point the lowest you would get was $600, and that's really kind of that's all I know about it so far. They're trying to basically replicate what was done under the under the Bush and Obama administration, I'm not sure what that looks like. There's a whole bunch. I'm sitting here looking at a whole bunch of options that some of us have put in there, like payroll tax holiday. That's what President Trump really wanted. It actually helps individuals quickly, but then it doesn't get to poor workers or tip-dependent industries or retirees. So there's a whole. I've got page after page of ideas that people are trying to assess how to help folks in your situation, Joe. So I appreciate the input. Stay posted, because I'm trying to keep this stuff updated either through some of the videos on my website that we post or through links that we put on my website as we get information. So I appreciate that, Joe. We're down to let's see here now. Abby, don't have a city for you, Abby, but are you there?
Hello?
Hi, Abby. How are you?
Hi, I'm Abby from Chandler.
Chandler, welcome, Abby.
So I respectfully disagree with Richard from Mesa. I was actually incredibly disappointed to see that you were one of the 40 who declined to vote in the positive for the bill that was just put out. And I'm understanding more about why you voted how you did. But I guess I would like to know, how would you change the bill so that it bailed out people as much as it bailed out corporations?
Okay, so Abby, thanks for the call. Appreciate that. So here's the way to think of it. The bill that was passed out at 1:30 or so in the morning, Saturday morning, got changed dramatically in some ways on that Monday, when after we'd all left town, but we were trying to work long distance, if I can put it that way. And some of the ways it got changed to make it better was it allowed for people under corporations, not corporations, but small businesses who have fewer than 50 employees would be able to be able to be exempt from the onerous conditions that were put on 51 to 499 employers. And so that's a problem. I think we would have reevaluated some of the stuff that went on in with regard to plus 50 employers. I think we'd have looked at temporary deregulation, which actually, as we have seen recently, causes immediate and sustainable growth in the economy. I think we'd look at prepayment of tax refunds. So one of the things that is that gives every household a refund of $5,000, roughly equal to the average refund for 2019-2020 tax years combined. That refund could gradually have been recouped through future withholding of refunds or by setting surcharges once the economy improves, but that would have had an immediate impact on individuals and households. I think you could reduce the pass-through tax rate. This is a bill that I actually introduced last year, and because the hardest hit businesses are going to be those small firms of 50 or fewer employees, and they have a higher tax rate than big corporations, and so we could have implemented that, and what that does is that immediately moves into impacting the individuals who work for that company, because that company is able to become more profitable as soon as we get the economy rolling again. Then there's a couple other technical things that we could have done on the tax side, which would have also provided some immediate relief to individuals. Elimination of certain paid leave mandates actually might have preserved liquidity for some of the small firms so they could keep people employed. What you have now, Abby, is actually businesses that are laying off, closing their doors, and if they haven't laid off, they're going to be laying off and terminating employment for folks, and that's really a problem. So you have to find a way to keep liquidity in the market so somebody like our restaurateur who called in earlier can get money for his small business. Will, and so he needs to be able to get access to those markets. That keeps his 5 employees working. That's because it allows him to bridge some of this tumultuous time right now. Protection of industries from regulatory takings, such as when the government comes in and says nobody go to restaurants, and nobody fly in the airlines, nobody go to bars, nobody go to museums, etc. You want to provide an opportunity for maybe some interest-free loans from the Treasury. So that allows, again, the small business to stay open and working, and that impacts individuals and keeps them there. So these are some things that I think would have been good in phase 2. And if we couldn't get them in phase 2, they wouldn't accept those. I'm hopeful that in phase 3, and then I've got a whole series of additional ones that would actually go in and help individuals there. So I think that's really critical. I appreciate your criticism. That's fine. It's one of the things that I love about this country is that we're not all the same. We all don't think the same. We all have different opinions. And I am happy that you felt comfortable enough to call me in and call me out on that, and in a very kind way to tell me that you disagreed. And I appreciate that. And so I think we've got time for one more call. We have time? Yeah. Okay, we're going to do one more call here. We're going to go Christine and Gilbert.
Good evening, Congressman. Thank you for taking my call. Good evening.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, thank you. Some of us that are watching this happen and thinking back to the last crisis that happened, which we needed federal aid, are kind of getting nervous about, what that means as far as the risks and benefits that are really come to our local municipalities by declaring a state of emergency. I mean, in our own town of Gilbert, we don't have any confirmed cases yet, but yet we have this state of emergency. And it just makes, I've been talking to a lot of people, it just makes me nervous too, knowing last time we had this type of state of emergency and we had federal funding, we got strings attached and called Common Core. And so a lot of us are very nervous about that. So what can you say to the risks and benefits to our local towns and cities declaring a state of emergency?
Yeah, great question. So when you have a state of emergency, I'm not really sure what that does for the municipality because I haven't looked into state law. But typically what you're going to get some, both at the municipal, state, and the federal level, at all 3 levels, I should say, you're going to get some authority given to the executive branch or the executives of that governmental entity to do and implement certain immediate measures necessary to protect the public safety and health. That's the idea behind it. Additionally, you also free up access to state and federal funds to deal with that emergency. That's kind of what it's about. So, for instance, when President Trump declared recently a national emergency, that freed up about $42 to $43 billion to be able to go to states and local governments dealing with some of these serious issues. On the other side, on the flip side, what you get is you do actually cede some authority from your normal governance structures to the central authority of whatever government entity you have, and that's what we see going forward at the federal level. So you can go back to under George W. Bush, and then also under Barack Obama, when they've declared emergency situations. What's happened is it has created certain constituencies that have actually remained all this time and never been pared back. It increases the size and scope of government, and that's part of the con. So some people like to see these things. I don't think any of us should like to see any of this stuff because we're a country based on rights. We recognize rights, and one of those rights is the First Amendment. And the First Amendment allows for freedom of association and assembly. And think about that. They cherished those rights, understanding that it's important when times are good and everybody's safe and everything. It's okay to assemble that way, but people should also have the choice to assemble even when there are risks, and that's you're kind of giving up a little bit of that when you move this way. The other thing is, I'm going to take another question or two, and then I'm going to close out with a statement, because I think it's important, because I see the direction some of these questions are going. They want to know what the long-term impact is of stimulus packages, and I want to talk about that. So let's go next to Todd in Chandler. Hi, Todd. You still with us?
I am. It's been a great conversation. Good evening. Thank you for taking my question. I'd like to ask, I'm an executive for a mid-large construction company. There's a lot of construction in Arizona right now, and unfortunately, construction workers are not really able to practice social distancing.
Right.
I have about 300 to 500 employees roughly on any given week, and a lot of them are afraid that they're going to see construction shut down overnight, similar to the way we've seen restaurants and bars shut down quickly. Do you see that? Do you see that risk? The layoffs could be potentially devastating on a national level if that was to occur nationally, and I just would like to get your perspective and your guess on what you think might happen there.
Well, Todd, I appreciate the question, and I will also tell you that I appreciate you using the word guess, because right now, what I'm going to offer is merely a guess, and I can only base it on the context of the discussions that I've had. I have not had any of the leadership of the White House or in Congress or anybody even locally tell me that they are considering doing anything vis-a-vis the construction industry. And so I haven't heard that. So my guess is, in Arizona at least, you're probably not, you might not see anything happen. But having said that, I got to give you a caveat, and this is only because I think you need to know both sides. And the bottom line is I'm merely guessing when I say I don't think anything unless the number of cases rises in Arizona substantially. Then the governor may choose to do something else. I don't know. But I do know that in Pennsylvania, for instance, they closed down basically all businesses today, except for what they called like health and life services businesses, and that I think is the first state in the country to do that. I don't know from which they derive that authority to do that. Maybe in the Pennsylvania Constitution they have that authority. I don't know. So in any event, I know beyond just mere speculation, I can tell you, Todd, that I've not heard anybody discussing that in the state of Arizona or at the national level to date. And things like I said earlier today in our teletown hall, this thing is extremely fluid, and so we need to recognize that. And I just pray that we don't see that. We don't see what's happening to the restaurant and hospitality industry. We don't see that in the construction industry as well. I'm going to go to Dale in Mesa. Hi, Dale.
Congressman, thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, I want to commend you. Anybody that can take Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff has all my respect.
Dale, thank you.
A little while ago, you had a private restaurant owner in Phoenix, and I guess part of my question may kind of help them out. A lot of these business owners, these small business owners, they may own their restaurant, they may own their business, they may own their hairstyling company, but they don't own the property. They have a landlord, they have something like that. Some of us have rent or a mortgage. Is there anything in any upcoming stimulus, or maybe something that you can speak to the governor about, to either forbear rental? I mean, I know this is getting into private business here, but more or less that ship's already sailed. Everything's in a private business now. some type of relief for those of us who've had wages cut due to being laid off, being furloughed, or businesses being closed, yet they still owe their rent or mortgage?
Yeah, great question, Dale. I actually approached the administration last week and with a couple of ideas on that. What was reported to me yesterday from the administration is that Secretary Mnuchin is negotiating. Strike that. What's happening is that HUD is negotiating with mortgage lenders to try to get them to recognize and relieve those who otherwise might be afflicted with coronavirus that can't make mortgage payments, or those who are afflicted because of the ramifications economically. They've had their employment has been either taken away or significantly reduced, and so they're going to have trouble making their mortgage. I've also requested that the administration look into payments for rent and auto payments. Seems to me that the most basic things are there. I know that some states have worked with some of the utilities to make sure that there's no cutoffs during the time of the virus, with some way to try to make up back pay and what have you. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's kind of where we are, Dale. My understanding is that those negotiations, at least yesterday afternoon, they were HUD was, and that's the Housing and Urban Development, was making negotiations on it. That's what we were told yesterday, and we'll see how that plays out as well. So I mean, I think we need to get an answer on that one sooner rather than later, because I know a lot of payments are going to be coming up. So next one we're going to do Lisa in Chandler. Hi, Lisa.
Hi there. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are
okay,
you today?
so frustrated, I won't lie, with everything that's going on. So I have an interesting question, because I think that the reaction to COVID has been very extreme. And what I don't understand is when just regular old influenza A kills more people all over the world than COVID has. I mean, like, things are getting back to normal in China. I don't understand, like, why we don't have more keep calm and carry on messages given to your constituency, and I mean that, like, countrywide. And I want to know what we can do as your constituents to calm people down and reassure them that eventually life will go back to some sort of normal for us, because the behavior of people that I've seen outside is, I'm just disappointed in people. So what are we doing?
So that's a great question. So I want to always, so one of the reasons for doing this is to get feedback from people, and the other reason is to maybe let folks know that there are some answers, and for short term maybe we can do something, and for long term we need to be very careful as well. But I always try to put in context some of this stuff, and that's to not minimize, but to acknowledge this is a serious situation. I mean, it really has serious ramifications. Italy has been terribly ravaged. China was ravaged. South Korea brought theirs under control pretty quickly, largely not because they did testing. Testing does not cure anybody. Testing just provides you a baseline and gives you a denominator. So you can see if we test 100,000 people and 10, 11, whatever the percentage is, actually contracts, is found to have coronavirus, and then some there's a mortality rate of some kind in there. It gives surety, it gives calmness, because it's no longer a mystery. I think what we have today is just so much unknown about this, and I think that kind of builds anxiety. And so, just if I can give a little context to this, I would just refer everybody to a website called statnews.com. It gives all kinds of information on this from a statistical point of view. Then there's a piece in the Daily Wire today where a Stanford professor talks about there's a strong indication based on data that we have here that are the countermeasures that have gone on in other countries and here may be overreactions. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that it's important to keep that in context. So here's another point of context. So as of today, this year, Americans, according to CDC, have had over 30 million cases of the flu, the influenza. We've hospitalized over 350,000 people with complications due to the influenza, and tragically, very sadly, we've seen more than 20,000 people pass away due to complications pertaining to influenza this year in the United States alone. Internationally, the coronavirus has infected, as far as we know, 200,000 cases, and the mortality rate is significantly below our influenza mortality rate. These things should be put in context with also the context that this is a new virus that we don't really know everything about yet, and we're trying to get a handle on it and get a grip on it. I would say that some of the reasons that we've been so delayed in getting some of the impact of the coronavirus is because President Trump did a good thing by immediately closing off traffic with China. And then as the EU has become more and more the epicenter of the world coronavirus epidemic, he closed off transportation with Europe. These things are critical to keep in mind. Also, as we go through and we talk about this, we're talking about stimulus packages, and we need to make sure that we be careful of what we do. And so as I'm going through this, I'm just trying to answer some questions since we're running out of time quickly. And that is, number one is that we're talking about spending a lot of money and get testing out. So testing kits going to get out there. There should be testing kits available today. And so that's important. But also there's impacts, pro and con, that you have to debate as you go through this. So we're going to go now. Randy in Gilbert has a question related to this, I think.
Yeah, hi, Andy.
Randy?
How you doing? Yes, sir.
Good. How are you? You have a question today, Randy?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead with your question, please.
Okay, yeah. I am just extremely concerned about all the, crazy Keynesian economic programs that are being planned, and the trillions upon trillions of dollars that kind of people see as just free money. And I understand that's appealing, but the government has no money. It has what it takes from you and I, and just to print it out of nowhere doesn't make it right. And the long-term effects, our economy was already in a bubble, and because of the Fed, just how much billions of dollars it was put into the economy, and now we're planning on doing it more and bailing out, this company and that company, and just more free money, it seems like, for people are wanting and asking for, and I get it. It's very appealing, but it's just, remember, when the government doesn't have it, and it's a long-term effect it's going to have on our economy by just injecting trillions upon trillions of dollars. It boggles my mind. It's nuts.
Well, Randy, that's a valid point, and so I'll address that briefly and just say that right now, here's a way to think of it. The first phase was $8.3 billion. The second phase, bare minimum, is probably in the neighborhood. No, they didn't take time to actually forecast this, but it's anywhere from $150 billion to $500 billion for phase two. The The National Emergency Fund is about $42 billion. The next phase is a baseline of approximately $800 billion. I sit on a committee where yesterday we had a teleconference to discuss some legislation that there'll be an additional $50 billion asked based on that legislation. We're not the only committee that's being asked things like that. There's other executive level appropriations that are going to go. So what you're seeing here is somewhere well north of $1 trillion in the first three phases and the emergency, and with a number of additional fundings for agencies that are being taxed greatly due to the coronavirus response. Then you have, I was told today that there's a phase 4 relief package already being designed to follow on, and I'm told that that's probably another $500 billion. So you can quickly see how this can add up to $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion. Already this year, we're going to be about 1.3, leaving out all of that we're $1.3 trillion in what I call a structural deficit. In other words, we will spend $1.3 trillion more than we bring in revenue. Also, GDP is going to sag, and the question is, will it rebound enough to go positive? It'll be positive, but we're not contracting now. But the estimate I heard is that the GDP will decline by about $1.5 trillion. Now, you know why I don't usually talk about this is that it doesn't make for a real sunshine picture. But you ask, and you are my constituents. You guys are the government. You are the people who basically are so powerful. You should realize you are the ones that run this country. But anyways, if you look at that, if your GDP declines by $1.5 trillion and your structural deficit is anywhere between $2 and $3 trillion, what you have then is a debt to GDP ratio that will be well over 100% of GDP, and that is when you have a really a very difficult time turning an economy positive in a lasting way. And so those are things that I think about and I worry about. So Randy, you asked me about that. I do think about those things. I think there are many of my colleagues who think about those things as well. We talk about them. And so I would just tell you that we want to be very prudent. We want to be wise. We want to address these things, this very anomalous situation. This really is a situation that's very difficult because it's not like a natural disaster like a flood or a hurricane. This is not like Arizona forest fires where we know they're going to happen every year, so we plan funding for taking care of them. So I will just tell you that that we're out of time tonight, but thank you, all of you who called in tonight. I appreciate the concerns you have. Some of you have asked to call in so we can help with some specific casework. Others, I need to find out some answers to some specific questions that you asked tonight that I simply did not have. And so we'll see what we can do to find those out. And with that, I will thank all of you and wish you all a good evening and tell you I appreciate the questions so much. We're going to have to try to do this again soon so we can I want to keep you up to date. I urge you to please go to bigs.house.gov where I'm keeping the links up to everything from CDC, NIH, Arizona Department of Health, and other briefings that I receive from various sources, whether it's the administration or within the Congress. We're trying to keep you up to date. With that, thanks again. Appreciate all of you being with us tonight.